For the 2000 Summer Olympics, a total of 30 sports venues were used. After Melbourne hosted the 1956 Summer Olympics, Australia made several bids for the Summer Olympics before finally winning the 2000 Summer Olympics by 2 votes over Beijing, China. Venue construction was set at the Homebush Bay area of Sydney in an effort to rehabilitate the land. Environmental studies of the area in the early 1990s forced remediation to be used for about a fifth of the sites selected. 15 new venues were constructed for the Games. During the Games, 137 cars were removed from the streets of Sydney before the start of the women's marathon, while the last day of the canoe sprint finals were delayed by 6 hours due to heavy winds at the Regatta Centre. Many of the venues used for the 2000 Games continue to be in use as of 2016. Venues: Sydney Olympic Park, Sydney. Outside Sydney before the Olympics, Australia first hosted the Summer Olympics in 1956 at Melbourne. The main venue used was the Melbourne Cricket Ground, which hosted the ceremonies, athletic events, and the finals for both field hockey and football. Sydney first made preliminary plans for the 1972 and 1988 Summer Olympics, but they were not followed through. Melbourne made a bid for the 1988 Summer Games but withdrew in February 1981. Brisbane made a bid for the 1992 Summer Olympics, losing out to Barcelona, while Melbourne finished fourth in the bidding for the 1996 Summer Olympics, won by Atlanta. The first serious review for Sydney as an Olympic city took place in 1973 on rehabilitating the Homebush Bay area as an Olympic site, though those plans were not taken seriously until 7 years later when Sydney was making a preliminary bid for the 1988 Summer Games. Nick Greiner, who served as Premier of New South Wales from 1988 to 1992, led the effort to use the Olympics as a catalyst for rehabilitating Homebush Bay, forming a review committee on this in 1989. The Australian Olympic Committee endorsed this idea provisionally in December 1990 and officially 3 months later, in the bid package submitted to the International Olympic Committee for Sydney. All of the venues would be located within 30 minutes of the Homebush Bay area where the Sydney Olympic Park would be constructed. Sydney was selected 45-43 over Beijing in the fourth round of exhaustive voting to host the 2000 Games at the 23rd of September 1993 IOC meeting in Monte Carlo. For site selection, 760 hectares of Homebush Bay was selected for use, though the area was not planned upon completion until 2010. Sydney's selection to host the 2000 Summer Olympics changed this. The state's sports centre opened in 1984 and Bicentennial Park opened 4 years later. The Sydney International Aquatic Centre and Sydney International Athletic Centre were completed in 1994, but by 1995, it was determined by the Sydney Olympic Organising Committee that venue construction needed to be accelerated. In 1995, Bob Carr was elected as New South Wales Premier, with one of his first tasks was to develop a master plan for venue construction. A plan was approved in February 1996 along with lessons learned from 1996 Summer Olympics led to modification of the plan in February 1997. Environmental consideration was taken during site selection and construction, including the planting of 16,000 trees around completed venues venues once construction was completed. Soil and water testing at Homebush Bay in the early 1990s determined that 9 million cubic meters of domestic, commercial, and industrial waste was located on 160 hectares of the land, resulting in remediation. Other items involved at the venues were the removal of electrical transmission lines, the development of rail lines near the venues, the construction of a new ferry wharf, and construction of vehicular parking sites. 15 new venues were under construction by 1995, with all of them being completed in 1999. Temporary venues were added for beach volleyball and women's water polo in 2000. Prior to the Olympics, 40,000 people were involved in venue construction for the Games. The Olympic Stadium was constructed on the site of a cattle stockyard before they were sent to the slaughterhouse. Construction was delayed twice before commencing in earnest in September 1996. The stadium was completed in March 1999 and officially opened to the public 3 months later. The new Sydney Showground was built to replace the old Sydney Showground at Moore Park. The old Sydney Showground was first used in 1882 as part of the Sydney Royal Easter Show, but was starting to show its age by the 1970s. Construction of the new showground at Homebush Bay began in October 1997 and was completed for the 1998 Royal Easter Show. The Nsw Tennis Centre was constructed on a former home of the Australian Jockey Club from 1841 to 1869. The Sydney International Regatta Centre was constructed near a quarry in Penrith, a suburb of Sydney. It opened in July 1995 with competition starting 8 months later. Penrith Whitewater Stadium was constructed following pleas to the IOC from the International Canoe Federation and French President Jacques Chirac. After the sport was nearly excluded from the Games, pumps totaling 14,000 L per second delivered the amount of whitewater needed for the slalom canoeing events at Penrith. Holsworthy Barracks was the original site for the Sydney International Shooting Centre, but that was changed to the site not being available. This resulted in the organisers renovating an existing shooting range to meet International Shooting Sport Federation standards, a renovation that took 18 months to complete. Bondi Beach was constructed as a temporary venue between March and November 2000 and took up less than 20% of the beach area used. Test events at the venues ran from September 1998 to August 2000. During the Olympics, before the start of the women's marathon, street personnel in Sydney had to tow 137 cars that were parked along the course. Japan's Naoko Takahashi won the event. Canoe sprint events on the last day of the Games at the Regatta Centre were delayed for 6 hours by up to 50 miles per hour wind gusts. The Regatta Centre also had lane markers that were damaged and an official's aluminum dinghy sinking. 8 days earlier, in the men's rowing coxless 4 final, Great Britain's Steve Redgrave won the gold medal in his 5th straight Olympics. The endurance course of the equestrian eventing competition led to the hospitalization of 2 riders and 4 horses being injured, including one that was subsequently put to sleep. Meanwhile, the individual jumping final was held in the midst of high winds that forced volunteers to hold down some of the top rails until a rider approached. After the Olympics, the Olympic Stadium, now known as ANZ Stadium, continues to be used as of 2016, though with a reduced capacity of 83,500. The stadium was reconfigured after the Games, making it suitable for rectangular pitch and oval ground. sports with the removal of the athletics track and the use of retractable seating. For sport, the stadium is used for regular season National Rugby League games and the NRL Grand Final. It also hosts State of Origin home games for the Nsw Blues, and rugby union test matches involving the Wallabies. In a deal that ran from 2009 until 2015, the stadium was also host to all home finals for the Nsw Waratahs in the Super Rugby competition. It is also used for the Big Bash League 2020 cricket games. ANZ also plays host to various concerts. The Superdome, now known as Kudos Bank Arena, continues to play host to numerous concerts, award nights and sporting events as of 2012. It has hosted National Basketball League games, ANZ Championship Netball and International Netball games involving the Australian Netball Diamonds. In 2001, the arena played host to the Tennis Masters Cup. The arena also plays host to World Championship Boxing, Mixed Martial Arts, and is usually the Sydney venue used on tours of Australia by the WWE. Blacktown Olympic Park plays host to competitions for cricket, Australian rules football, soccer, softball, and baseball, with the Australian Football League's Greater Western Sydney Giants based there. The GWS Giants' new home base is also used in the AFL's pre-season NAB Cup competition. Penrith Whitewater Stadium hosted the ICF Canoe Slalom World Championships in 2005. The Sydney Entertainment Centre, which opened in 1983, continued to be in use until December 2015, hosting numerous concerts and conventions. The SEC was the home arena for the Sydney Kings in the National Basketball League, and occasionally played host to both national senior basketball teams, the Boomers and the Opals. The Sydney Convention and Exhibition Centre remained in use until it closed in December 2013, and was demolished in 2014 to make way for the new Sydney International Convention, Exhibition and Entertainment Precinct at Darling Harbour, which is due for completion by the end of 2016. Sydney Football Stadium, which was an existing stadium that opened in 1988, continues to be in use as of 2016 by the NRL, A-League, and Super Rugby. The SFS also hosts various concerts, as well as other sporting events such as boxing. The Homebush Street circuit for the V8 supercars has used the Olympic precinct since 2009. The circuit was designed by former multiple Australian touring car champion and Bathurst 1000 winner Mark Skye.